to do both at the same time.
Let me start by saying that it was an incredibly moving and brilliant film, to congratulate you on your work on it, because it's a brilliant work, and I want as many people as possible to see this.
Can't hear him. Talk into that microphone. And have this one.
I was just. Can you hear me? Yeah. I was just saying that it was an incredibly moving and great film, and I want as many people as possible to see this film, because we need as many people as possible to know about the effects of climate change. In terms of your question, we've said we're going to cut emissions by 80% by 2050. We're one of the few rich countries to say that we're going to do this. President Obama has followed, which I think is incredibly important. But the truth is, as the President of the Maldives said, we need every country involved in this. And I thought your film very powerfully explained why it can't just be Britain or Europe or the United States. Though we have the primary responsibility. We've been growing for 200 years and we've polluted all this carbon into the atmosphere. But we also need China and India and all these other countries to come along. And the most important thing, therefore, that I just say to this audience is that we have to present people with a message which is about growth, but low carbon growth. Because if we try and sell people in the developing world, whether they're in the Maldives or China or India, a message of no growth, and I know that's not what the film is saying, then I don't think we will convince them. So it's got to be a message that this is an incredibly urgent problem, but actually we can continue to grow, we can continue to take people out of poverty, which is what a lot of these countries want to do, but we can do it in a low carbon way.
Can I just go back to something you said earlier, which is of course the Climate Change Act you're referring to there, which is, as I'm sure you all know, a fantastic piece of legislation, and frankly we gave the Maldives a round of applause. Our government also deserves a round of applause for the Climate Change Act, 80% cut by 2050. The best in the world. Well done. But that is the talk and that is the promises, and that is 2050, and that's a very long time away. What about the reality? Mark? What's the reality? Sorry, we didn't mean to pin you in, that was the microphone issue.
You are between the two of us, you have a chance. I think we all agree that the Climate Change Act has been path-breaking for the whole of the world. But there are some really disturbing short-term things happening here in the UK. We're expanding the motorway network. We've just said, the government has just said yes to the third runway at Heathrow Airport, and potentially we'll be saying yes to the first new coal-fired power station for 30 years in this country at Kingsnorth in Kent. And coal-fired power is, of course, the most carbon-intensive way of generating electricity that we know. So I would hope very much that you'll be able to tell us now that the Kingsnorth decision will be a no.
I can't watch it now. But let me say this about coal, because it's a really important point, and it goes back to my point about China and India. I don't think we can carry on building unabated coal-fired power stations in the way that we've done. Absolutely right. But we have a responsibility also, which is to show that we can use the new technology, which is called carbon capture and storage, which reduces emissions from coal-fired power stations by 90%. Because if our message to China and India is you can't burn any coal anymore, that is a completely implausible message to them when they're building one coal-fired power station every week in China. So what we need to do, and this is again a massive responsibility that we face in developed countries, is to put the money in my view, into the new technologies like carbon capture and storage, which can show that something like coal can become a clean fuel.
I'm going to invite Pete back at this stage. Pete, would you mind joining us?
Yeah.
And perhaps bring that very, very large piece of paper with you.
And hand out the other one.
Where is it?
It's coming.
That's a very good question. It's coming. Here it comes. Ed, we've made you a special pledge.
Oh, that's nice.
And everybody in the room has got their own copy of this. They're being passed around now.
Thanks for giving me warning in advance as well.
Get up on stage.
Okay, so Pete is going to be the first one to sign the pledge. It's directed to you as our representative in Copenhagen. You're going to read it out, Pete.
Yeah. I don't know whether you can all see that. You may not be able to read it. And it is true, Mr. Miliband, you're right, but it was thrown on me as well pretty quickly. In these days of spin, we have to spin pretty quickly. I've had enough of promises. We tried to get Mr. Blair not to go to Iraq, and he went to Iraq. 2.5 million people walked in the streets of London. We weren't heard. We're not having that again, and we're not going to lie down. So, It's very interesting. It's very interesting. A lot of people say to me, "Yeah, I understand it. I can agree with it." And I'm like, "But what can I do? What can I do?" Well, I'll just tell you one thing that I'm going to do, Mr. Miliband. Well, there's three things I'm going to do. This particular pledge will give everybody a chance, if they want to join the Not Stupid campaign. And it says, "Dear Mr. Miliband, if you commission a new dirty coal power station at Kings North, thereby increasing our emissions when we should be massively decreasing them, then you are clearly unfit to represent the people of Britain at the Copenhagen Climate Summit. And therefore I promise to," and there are 6 options here, and there's a 6th option at the bottom which says add your own. Right? This is very difficult to do. I'm going to do it. My first thing would be to very sadly return to Her Majesty the Queen the OBE that I was given in 2002, because I don't believe that I can be a real officer of the British Empire if that is what's going to happen. So that would be mine there. OBE. The OBE goes back. If the government in November make the wrong decision at Kings North, this is what I will do. The OBE goes back. At the same time, I will say to Her Majesty, as a citizen and not as an officer of the British Empire, I would like you to dissolve this present Parliament, because they're not capable of dealing with a mandate that they've been given by the people. Spinning is not enough. So that would be the second thing.
Right over there, right over there.
Right over there, sorry, wrong one.
Pete just agreed to take direct action.
It's a good job I'm not an activist, isn't it?
You are now, you disagreed.
And the very last thing I would do is, unfortunately, I would never be able to vote for the Labour Party again. Full stop. I would never, ever be able to vote for the Labour Party again, Mr. Miliband. And I want you to tell that to the party and to Mr. Brown and any of your other cohorts.
It's simple, which is that I hear what Pete says about Kings North, and I've said very clearly that I don't think we should carry on building unabated coal-fired power stations, and I think what we do need to do, though, is find the technology, and this is the responsibility of government, to make coal clean, because if we don't do that, we're never going to tackle the problem of climate change, I promise you, because if China is building a coal-fired power station 1 a week, and Poland, for example, in Europe, has 94% of its electricity from coal. The easy thing to say is we can do it all with renewables. Well, I think what Piers has done in renewables is brilliant, but we can't do it all from renewables. You need, I'm afraid, clean coal-fired power stations. You also need nuclear, which is not really popular with some people in this audience, but you need all the low-carbon technologies that are available, and you need to use all of them. And that's not a sort of romantic response, but it's the right response, I think. And we had the Chinese here 3 weeks ago, and I'm afraid if I'd said to them, our response to you is you should shut down all your coal-fired power stations, they wouldn't have been part of the climate change deal at Copenhagen. But, and this is the good thing, if I say to them, we accept our responsibility to drive forward the technology which will make coal a clean fuel of the future, then they might be part of it. And that's, I think, the best hope we've got.
Thanks, Ed. And I think, though, that the central point remains that if you're going to be increasing emissions, then we do not want you representing us at Copenhagen. And we're going to do everything we can to get somebody else representing us. Thank you very much.
Cheers.